We sure do appreciate that.
All right, welcome back to Salty Saints. My name is Hayden Holm, and today I am joined by a fine panel of guests. If you are with us for the first time, Salty Saints is a fun and faithful show for church-going dads, okay? And tonight we are talking about therapists, because apparently the church has a big therapist problem. We're going to be talking about that. That's why I have none other than Logan Blazard out, licensed therapist from Utah, which is great. So he's going to be our definitive source of truth on this. Then we also have Sam St. Laurent, one of our fan favorites. And today I brought them on because I saw something that was more shocking than Lindsay Clancy's GoFundMe. Ooh, hey, yeah.
Ooh, hey, yo.
All right, so before we get there, there's something I need to address. If you are in a Dead Elders Quorum, there is probably a lot that you are missing out on. And that is why we have created For the Strength of Dads. It's a big community. We talk faith, family, fitness, finance, and everything in between. And this November, the 12th through the 14th, we are hosting a big retreat, the For the Strength of Dads retreat out in St. George, Utah. We're going to have a lot of protein. There's going to be pickleball, swimming, hiking, a lot of fun, cold plunge. There's going to be some workshops. Logan's going to be there. And we're going to have a ball. You can learn more about that at strengthofdads.com. That's strengthofdads.com. But now that we've got that, there is a bit of a dash of salt that we need to get to first. So we're going to get to the dash of salt.
And now it's time for a dash of salt. Oh, not too much now.
Okay, so here we go. This one is coming at you live from X, what was formerly Twitter. And this is something I wanted both of you, because this apparently is a new trend where women are taking to their bathrooms as a way to emotionally regulate. This says, some days as a mom, my patience is hard to control. Instead of having a screaming match with my toddler, I throw ice in my tub.
Hey, that's actually not a bad idea. I never even tried that, because, yeah, it doesn't break anything, huh?
It allows me to feel angry without being destructive. Okay. So we'll probably stop it there. All right, what are your first thoughts? We got some angry moms smashing perfectly good ice in perfectly good tubs. Do we think that's a good thing? What are we thinking? Sam, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Logan after that.
I think it's a creative use of ice, right? It's something that you can continually make. It's cheap. And I agree, like, people use ice now, like dry ice, to, like, clean off surfaces. And so I'm certain it, like, actually doesn't destroy anything, like she says. So I think it's pretty effective, yeah. I give it like a
so you're saying this is
10,
an effective way.
I'd say like it's like a 7 for effectiveness, but I'd say it's like a 10 for creativity.
It beats alcohol. Sure. I'll say that, huh? Yeah.
Depends on the person. You gotta ask different people.
That's right. Logan, what are your thoughts?
I just got a wonderful new skill to teach all my female mother clients. I don't think I've ever suggested that, actually, so it's good to hear.
Yeah,
kind of like the old school man punching the pillow thing. That's what it related to me. Like, that's kind of that version.
Right. So the whole goal is, like, I don't want to put this out in front of my kids. I don't want to do a screaming match, so I'm just going to scream at my tub. Boy, I don't know. For me, I think about the kids that are maybe waking up to that, like mommy's going to have her special time in the bathroom, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah! And she's going Braveheart on the ice cubes. Boy, I don't know. I think that would probably leave me a little bit confused, a little concerned if I were a toddler in that house. Like, you all right, Mom?
All over the floor.
Why do we never have any ice?
If I were speaking to the moms that are following this trend, if that's the thing, I don't know about anything about that, but I would just say, just tell your husband and your kids before you go in there so they don't call the police or something.
Totally. So they don't catch you unawares as you are regulating your emotions from throwing ice.
Yeah.
You're smashing ice on the tub. Great, awesome. Well, let's get to our featured presentation here. This is coming at us live from an account named Latter Day Struggles. So you know this is going to be a faithful account. I don't know who names these things, but apparently it started off as a faithful channel, and then wouldn't you know it, it turned. It took a turn for the worse. So this gal, she wants to give a message about why churches struggle with mental health professionals, which is why we brought a mental health professional on with us tonight. So here we go. Oh.
Feel really uncomfortable with mental health workers or with psychology in general, I want to just share with you a few thoughts on this. My name is Valerie Hamaker, and I'm the host of the Latter-day Struggles podcast. I think that religious institutions, aka the LDS Church, struggles with mental health workers because they know at...
Did you catch that real quick? Religious institutions, aka the LDS Church. So she was like, let me speak broadly, but this is actually just the church. All right. Anyway, keep
some
going.
level that competent mental health workers want their clients to thrive in every way possible, independent of institutional affiliation. Well-trained mental health workers encourage personal development over institutional loyalty, no matter what the institution is. Furthermore, well-trained mental health workers help people suss out when they are in healthy as opposed to unhealthy relationships.
I'm pretty sure sus is a clinical term for all those who are wondering in the chat. Anyway.
With people or institutions. And also they help people know what to do if they're in toxic or unhealthy relationships. Healthy churches want their membership to be psychologically healthy, and they even welcome feedback from members who teachings and practices cause them anyway. Of course, it's never pleasant to be on the side of receiving feedback that your well intentions are hurting people. But the healthiest churches tolerate that feedback because they care more about the members' well-being than about the church's image or loyalty from the membership. A sign of a maturing Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will be its ability to collaborate with mental health professionals and to listen to the feedback from their own membership. There's such valuable stories that come from those that are struggling. This is true in any church tradition, and the more the church tradition can listen, the more it can grow and the more it can thrive. This actually is...
Okay, well, we'll stop it there. It kind of keeps going on for a bit. All right, so let me get your first thoughts when you hear that. So apparently the church isn't doing a good job listening, and apparently we are anti-mental health professionals. I guess we just do not like them mental health professionals one bit. Logan, what are your first thoughts when you hear this?
First thought is LDS Family Services. We employ therapists and caseworkers and stuff like that. So that's my first thought is like, fundamentally, I don't know if I think that's how the church feels. I think there's definitely doubt and worry about how therapists go about their therapy, right, with members of the church. That's pretty normal, I think, and rightfully so.
How dare
I think
you
everyone...
trivialize this woman's pain by just saying the simple line in their family services? I love that you're going there.
I apologize.
I actually serve with a bishop who is currently a therapist for working for the church in family services. And so when I saw this, it made me spit out my flavored soda water. I was like, what? No, I work with this guy every single week. I'm serving with this guy who is a licensed therapist. He had to go through all the hoops. He's just as good as all the other therapists out there. And now I'm hearing that apparently the church has a therapy problem.
My other thought, I'll just throw it in, is, and I'm not like, when I see these videos, I generally hate, and I guess maybe, sorry, this is so maybe inappropriate, but I don't have the balls to be like, oh my gosh, what a wacko. But just probably because I don't want to be critiqued for everything I say.
Totally.
But the reality is, like, she's, from what I can tell, she's speaking. She used 2 or 3 phrases in there that just, to me, I'm like, I'm going to take a step back for a second when I hear it, because she's like, healthy churches, healthy institutions, healthy professionals. And I'm like, look, you talk to 500 doctors, you're generally going to get a different opinion from each of them on some level. Same thing with therapists. I don't know where she's getting her authority to state what a healthy church is. So that, again, that to me, I'm just like, I don't I don't know why someone would be like, oh, this lady's a therapist. She knows what healthy churches do. So that's kind of my initial thoughts.
Right. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, the ice machine on the fourth floor is broken. Otherwise, I would have went up there and grabbed some to throw at the bathtub.
Oh,
But
so
no,
you're fuming. Look at that.
no, no. I agree. I agree with Logan. Like, it's the first thing that kind of like hit me when she was speaking was she's trying to make the church into something that I don't believe it even should be. And she's kind of using this language like, the church wants to evolve and needs to start looking towards therapy and therapists specifically in order to take that next step. And now some of the stuff that she's saying, I'm like, isn't entirely like wild off the walls, I will say. Like, there's some stuff that she's saying that like, okay, sure. But I think her overall message, I just don't agree with, only because she's trying to make the church, like I said, into like something that I don't think it even should be remotely a part of. But
Right. Well, the problem I have is there's a lot of insinuation that goes on, and that's the problem with a lot of the anti-religious, specifically anti-Mormon therapists that I see online, is that their language is just insinuation. By saying that I hope the church can get to a healthy place, they're insinuating that it currently is unhealthy, that it currently is a damaging place, and that by practicing this religion, you are participating in this harm. You are furthering the harm. When, if you actually look at like the data is pretty clearly, pretty clearly states that people that practice religion, more times than not, actually, from a mental health perspective, do better than their counterparts. And now, obviously, that doesn't apply to everybody in that religion. You're going to have off cases and stuff like that, but we're talking bulk. Yeah, it's going to be a good thing. So when she's kind of out here saying like, the church, it's not healthy yet, it's damaging. To me, what I heard is kind of like a bitter lover, like a scorned ex-lover, where she was like, you wish, if only you would have listened to me, then I would have stayed. And so I was like, is this woman actually faithful? Because I know the name of the podcast is Latter-day Struggles, so I'm like, I don't know, could be, maybe not. So I decided to do a little bit of investigation. LDS therapist is right at the top, so this is someone who uses their professional credentials in their bio, one of the first things that you do. And so you're like, okay, this is, if I were an active member of the church, I would say, yes, this is for me. And then the first post, most adult LDS struggle with age-appropriate critical thinking skills. Boy, way to start off on a hot foot right there. So to me, I'm seeing that maybe perhaps she is not as faithful as she is painting herself to be in her bio here, where it's like, okay, you look at that, you're like, yeah, I could see this gal in the Relief Society. And then 4 or 5 posts in, you're like, wait a second, hold up. I think I'm being led into an anti-religious algorithm right now. And if you get sent her stuff, you're going to get sent more stuff like that. Our good friend Jeff Borders actually sent us an article that we are going to get to. But before we get there, I have a question for you. So where is the line between like genuinely helping a client to process their trauma versus actively coaching them to deconstruct their religion?
Are you
What are your
asking me or
thoughts on that?
Sam?
I'm going to ask you on that one, Logan.
I was like, Sam, take it, man. A
Yeah.
couple thoughts, and I think it's further along in the video too. Like, one other thing I just have to spew out. I had my ICE experience like Sam did earlier. Just
Yeah.
because we're professional, certified, educated mental health therapists, my argument is like that has no foundation whatsoever for how we should tell religions how to run their faith or anything. So to me, I'm just objectively trying to say, like, where is the authority or foundation coming from? There's research to support everything nowadays. And so it's just like, to me, I'm like, just because I'm a mental health professional does not mean I should tell anything, or let alone an organization like a religion or a certain church, how to do something, or that they're right or wrong. I get it. I hear this stuff every day in my office. I have many, many, many people
Right.
that I see that have left the church, that hate the church, that are anti, and I don't feel like we have any real conflict. I'm sure occasionally, we have things that we might not just vocalize to each other, but so that's my first thought. But to I guess to your question, ask it again, because I got on that tangent that I was emotional about.
Yeah. So where's the line between helping somebody process their trauma and
right.
helping them
Deconstruction.
deconstruct from the religion, like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
where's that
I
line
don't
between like,
I
hey, I'm
don't really
helping
think we
someone
should.
versus like I'm pushing?
I don't think we should really do
Mm,
much. I really, the reality is you can ask questions. And that's most of what I do with this kind of thing is like, look, ultimately, is this working for you? Is this helping you? I rarely ever, suggest people leave or stay or join a religion, just like I don't think therapists should tell someone to leave or join in a relationship or stay. That needs to be their decision. And so there's a lot of this going on, especially in Utah, right? Because it's just Utah, it's how it goes here. The therapists, it's very common,
totally.
they help people, navigate, and I'm not mocking, but like faith crisis, faith deconstruction, there's so much of that. I just personally don't practice in that way. I've worked with people who have left the church and that was their decision, and I was with them supporting them in their decisions. But I don't ever really like challenge or say or try and preach to them that they should believe it, just like the opposite. I don't engage in like fully share
Right.
much of anything of like my opinion or why this is bad or why it's hurt them. If they feel that way, I sit with them in that space, and in my opinion, that's the therapist's job. You create space and you can challenge thinking, you can tell them, some opinions at times, but the whole idea of deconstructing, and hey, maybe I'm ignorant here. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, I guess, but that's how I navigate it. And I think we've all been trained to have neutrality. So then to say, oh, your church did this to you, that's the opposite of neutrality. That's my single biggest probably argument to it.
I love that. Yeah, because that's what the layman like me would think about a licensed professional. Like they would have to be neutral, right? It's like that's part of getting licensed is like, yeah, I'm going to be neutral. I'm not going to try and impose my lifestyle and values on them. So you look at this and you're like, well, she's doing a great job. If she is an LDS therapist, she's doing a great job at not imposing her values on people because she's like trying to preach the opposite message. And then Jeff Borders sent this article over here. Let me see if this is going to load up for me. This is from Religion News Service. This is a publication here. Looks like that's not loading for me, but anyway, the article, it talks about the headline here. It says popular Mormon podcasters resigned from LDS Church a step ahead of excommunication. So the whole game here is that this gal was preaching against the church. She was leading people away from the church. And then when her leader said like, hey, maybe we don't do this, she was like, well, I'm just going to beat you to the punch and leave the church before anything can happen. So that's kind of the gist of that article, which
And is that the
kind
lady
of
you
sad
just
to see
showed?
it. Yes. So now it brings up another valuable question because we live in the age of 2026. A lot of stuff is online. There are a lot of people that are going to mental health, therapists and mental health professionals these days. What do you think is the best advice that we can give people on how they can do their homework on these therapists that they might be checking into? Because a lot of them may pose one way online, and then you might check into their practice and experience a different reality. So like for me personally, I know like 4 or 5 guys who their wives, they were going through a hard time. They were struggling with their mental health. They checked into a therapist, and that therapist eventually told this lady, all of these gals in 3 different cases, like, your family's the problem, your religion's the problem. Leave both of them and you'll be much happier. And then it left the husbands with just like their hats in their hands, and they were like, how did this happen? So how can we help dads do their homework in the age of 2026?
You talking to me or Sam?
Oh, to you. Sam is, although he does give great therapeutic advice, he is not necessarily a licensed professional. And so that's why I'll kick it over to you.
I'm good with that, but I like hearing everyone's opinion. Again,
Totally.
I appreciate, like, I don't know what we want to call it, the respect or whatever, because we have a degree in training, and it's needed. But I also think, like, dude, opinions are opinions, and we all have different ones.
Yeah.
I don't love the authority case very much, to be honest. I think it happens all the time. One of the biggest things that I've seen just kind of in literature lately is I kind of randomly look at stuff often. I read a lot of articles and stuff, and it's like, oh, are the new younger generation, the reason they're, disowning family and distancing from them is that therapist's fault, right? Same idea, same thing here. And a lot of parents will come to me that I know, and they'll be like, "Hey, we know you, so we can't, can you see our kid?" And I'm like, "Honestly, I probably shouldn't if I know you well at all." Um, but it's like, they're like, "So how do we do this? What do we do?" And I just say, I'm a feeler, and this is probably not like evidence based, but I'm like, dude, have a consult call, have a 20 or 30-minute call, see them 2 to 3 times. And my guess is if you just be straight with the therapist right up front, tell them what you're struggling with, most of the time you'll know within a few sessions, in my opinion. I wish there was an easier way than that, because people hate going and trying multiple therapists. In my experience so far, people do not like that. It's hard
Right.
talking to us anyways. We're a little different, right, as therapists usually. But honestly, like, I think good, just go check it out, talk to them, see how it fills out. I think, to your point, you can promote and say anything on your website. My experience, at least down here in Southern Utah, is most therapists will say stuff like that on their page. I help people deal with faith crises, which doesn't mean they're trying to lead you astray at all. I'm not claiming that. But you could email them and say, "Hey, what does that look like for you?" Generally speaking, in our training, they're like, "Look, if someone asks you, 'Hey, are you a member of the church?' They taught us, like, 'So that's interesting why you asked that. Tell me why that matters to you.'" Like, that's literally what we're taught to say. I was trained to that over and over and over. I'm a little more self-divulging, to be honest, than a lot of therapists, which I think people would probably critique the crap out of that for me. It helps me find the niche and the people that work best with me, right? That I work best with. So that's my style. It's probably different than most, against the grain. Um, and I'm not saying it's wrong to not tell them. I think it's fair to be like, "Look, I'm curious why that matters," because then you can have the conversation of, "Hey, I don't want to leave my faith," and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great approach as a therapist, even to be like, "Look, what does that matter?" And they can say, "Hey, my 15-year-old's coming to see you, or my wife's coming to see you. I'm just curious, kind of where your stance is on this faith crisis thing going on," and then hear what they have to say. And in my opinion, most of the time, you'll have a good feeling or not, to be honest.
I love
I
that.
also would
Yes.
encourage going in with the wife, as long as she's okay with that. Obviously, it's her choice 100%. But I'm a big believer in, like, families and, like, supportive type style to therapy. I do a ton
Yeah.
of individual therapy, but I involve family as much as possible in my practice, how I work. But that everyone's going to be so different that way.
I think that is fantastic advice. That is great. So, for all those fellas listening out there, your wife's going through a hard time. Maybe she's picking up some ice cubes and throwing them at the tub at night, screaming like Braveheart. Maybe that's a sign that she needs a little help. So, maybe going a couple times with her, checking out, vetting the therapist, also letting them know, like, "Hey, I am a faithful, active member of the church, and that is my goal, to stay a faithful, active member of the church, as is my
Excellent.
wife. And so let's go into this thing together with eyes wide open." I love that idea.
One thing I'll
Especially,
tell you
yeah,
dads
go
as
ahead.
well. Sorry, I apologize, man.
No, no, no,
I'll
no.
forget my ADHD. You're these dads, like this is something I am coming back to 3 times now. Authority. Just because you talk to a therapist does not mean that's the truth. Just like when you talk to doctors, it doesn't mean what they're telling you is actually correct or accurate or going to help. It often is, right? But I feel like we need to be more critical, actually, of what we're getting. It's your therapy. You should be driving that, not the therapist, right? We all have agendas, we all have bias. That's the reality of it. But if they're not open or adaptable to whatever it is you're trying to figure out as a client, you're probably not in the right office, is the reality, right? If you want to, so I just say, like, don't think that everything the therapist says means it's true. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Right. No, 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 no. I think that's great. So, what are your thoughts when a therapist uses their credentials to start pushing talking points online that aren't necessarily backed by, like, science? What as a licensed therapist, what are your thoughts on that?
So it's kind of weird, and this is going to be so vague and probably, anyways, everyone's going to disagree. I've said this multiple times. Like, everyone disagrees, and there's research to prove anything. And so I could say, "Hey, look, for example, perfect one that's just been there forever. For 40 years, they said a glass of wine is actually healthy at dinner, right? A glass of wine at dinner is perfectly fine." They came out
Yeah.
in the last decade, and they're like, "Actually, nothing about alcohol is healthy." Hayden, you and I might have talked about that. But it's like, so it's
Yes.
like, just because we have credentials, again, doesn't mean necessarily anything. And there's evidence. And I'm not saying don't value or look at evidence-based research. That's needed, and
Totally.
meta-analyses and the big picture. But I just think, like, look, most of us believe what we want to believe, and we're going to find crap that aligns with that. So it's just tricky. I don't think there's like some solid answer I can give here that's like, hey, but again, yeah, I don't know if it's even a clear answer at all. I don't think there's like a cut and dry answer to navigate and filter those things, to be honest.
No,
And we're
that's
on
totally
a we're
fine.
we're on a spiritual based podcast. That's why kind of the spirit trumps all, even though it's hard to know all the time. I'm like,
Yeah, it's all
use
good. Yeah.
discretion.
So, I've got a few chats that I want to read. Gamblicious9 says Sam looks like he's into Taekwondo therapy. 100%. He's got those Rex Kwon Do vibes going on over there.
No, it's
Fantastic.
I thought it was Taekwondo therapy.
Oh, no. Taekwondo. He's looking at a man in the special forces right there. And then
I wouldn't
this
want to
is
engage with him in Taekwondo.
Oh, totally.
I don't know Taekwondo.
Joselito, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Joselito811 says, I'm aware of lists of therapists, etc., but there are certainly examples of referrals to less than desirable therapists. For example, Jody Hildebrand. Yeah, and these therapists aren't cheap. Totally agree. Totally agree. If at any point in your therapy or in social media, you are like taping your kids to like a cactus and having them do like a Cheyenne sun dance or something like that, take a step back and maybe question those credentials. Just like what Logan's been saying this whole time. Credentials, they're not they're not the end all and be all at the end of the day. So the other piece here, so to answer the question that was posed by the therapist, Valerie, at the very beginning of all of this, she said, the church struggles. Does the church struggle with therapists? And I would say to that, no. I think the church struggles with activists. And that's the problem that we've been kind of pushing on all day, is that there are kind of anti-LDS activists taking to social media, pushing their own personal opinions while leveraging their credentials to do so, which kind of blindsides a lot of women. So this is what I hear this all the time from dads. They're saying, like, my wives are falling into these algorithms. They kind of fall out of love with the church, then they fall out of love with me, and it's just really stressful. So this is a prime example. So this is a gal, Ashley B. This is Ashley Buckner. So this is a gal that we have done a lot of work on trying to fix a little bit of how she presents on social media, because it used to be Ashley B Therapy. Now it's Ashley Buckner. Hey, there's one for the little guys right there. But on her bio, she lists herself as a trauma therapist, and she'll have a link that's like Ashley B LMFT, blah, 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 blah. So we still have some work to do, but this is like one of her posts. So she's practicing in southern Utah, I believe. She says, as Utah celebrates Pioneer Day, I think it's worth remembering that Brigham Young top black members could not hold the priesthood, publicly taught the doctrine of blood atonement, defended and promoted plural marriage, oversaw a system in which Native American children were taken from their families, signed legislation legalizing slavery, and blah, 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 blah. Happy Pioneer Day. And then what is it like to explain religious trauma in a state that still thinks Brigham Young is a hero? This is what it's like, a swing and a miss. So I don't know. I look at stuff like this and I'm like, this crosses the line from like professional, well-credentialed advice that you're giving to people who are in a mentally dark place. This is activism. Like, you found a niche that has gotten that has gotten you a lot of subscribers, because there's no kind of hate like LDS hate online. People love to hate us. And so she's got a lot of followers. It's boosted her through the roof. And now she's just doubling down on that, pumping out content. That, to me, this, if you were just to read this to me, I would say that's not therapeutic at all. This is just all activism. This is just someone that's anti-religious. But what are your thoughts when you see a licensed professional using their licensed professional page posting stuff like this?
Honestly, again, I'm sorry, I don't really do much on social media, so I don't even know who this is. I've never even heard of her. But yeah, when I think ultimately, and I was going to say this earlier, but it sounds pretty stupid, to be honest. It's like, dude, freedom of speech. They can say what they want. It doesn't matter that they're a therapist. They can say what they want. So part of me is like, whatever, if that's what you want
Right.
to follow. But I think the problem is, right, how many times do we critique bishops for giving spiritual advice? under their, we don't say credential, but like under their authority, and we critique the crap out of them. But when therapists do it, now it's okay and even worthy of it. And so
Right. They
so
have carte blanche.
yeah, yeah, it's contradicting to me. So to your point, there's nothing therapeutic about that, even though I'm like, I don't care if she writes stuff like that. Like, she can write her opinion. I think if she's going to post it on her therapist page, that's a little weird to me, because it's like, to your point, that's just activism, which is totally fair. Free game, do it. But if you're going to
Right.
hide that under the guise of therapy, that's where I would. And hey, we are all going to do that. I share personal opinions with people, right, as a therapist, but it's not to sway them, right? It's either to relate usually, or to understand, or to compare and be like, man, I'm way off. This was my experience. This is how I feel. So I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but it's
Yeah.
weird to me. It's contradicting to what she's trying to promote, it sounds like, as a therapist.
Yeah. So, I mean, I look at this, we're kind of in a new frontier in the age of social media where
Yeah.
therapists never have before have been able to do this. Like before, you didn't really know what your therapist's religious or anti religious beliefs were. It was just like, I go, I get treated, I'm done, it lives and dies there. But now the problem is that social media has become a great prospecting tool for a lot of people. So they use it as a marketing tool. So they're like, hey, I can find people as I go out, and I'm going to start creating content that starts attacking the church. Now, I'm okay with that too, until you start using those credentials in all of your materials and saying, hey, I'm a licensed therapist, and my professional scientific opinion is that I agree with all of the ex-Mormon talking points and all of the ex-Mo and anti-member Reddit threads that you've ever read in your life. At that point, I'm like, hey, wait a second. Get those credentials out of there. I'm okay with you saying whatever you want to say. Get all your credentials out of there, because there may be women or families that see that and make a connection that wasn't intended to be made. They might unintentionally be like, oh, I'm unintentionally leading people out of the church. That's like a naive take of it, but to me, they're filling a pipeline. They're trying to do that. And so the way that they have been doing that is by promoting stuff that goes counter to the church's narrative. So they're trying to pull people out, fills up their funnel, and then they get more clients at the end of the day that will pay them a monthly subscription. And they're like, hey, isn't this great? It's much better than tithing, right? Hey. but
So
but
client-centered
go ahead.
therapy is a model, right? It's not even really like a model you can follow, as far as I understand, to fidelity. But like, client-centered, we what the client wants is where we're supposed to go. I've done things where it's like, look, I think this is the problem, and they're like, yeah, but I don't want to work on that. So I've made that mistake. I think every therapist probably has. But my point is, if you're going to post it from a therapy page, this is very different than therapy. So I'm just differentiating. Like, when you post stuff like this, that's one thing. And I'm not going to speak a ton, as you can tell, critically of what she's posting. I get what you're saying. I frankly agree on like a
Totally,
personal
totally.
level.
Right, right,
But
right.
as a professional, my point is, if you're in the office promoting this kind of stuff or showing people this stuff, that's where I'm like, that's not client centered, that's therapy centered, right? And again, I'm sure all of us do it on some level. So speaking purely professional in an office with a client or a family or whoever you're working with, we need to be like, look, I can show you X, Y, and Z, but if that aligns with what I want, and I want to help you learn what I want you to learn, that's no longer client centered, right? That's just information and history behind a church and a leader and da, da, da. So to me, from a professional standpoint, that's where I would emphasize. I know I'm getting away from like the whole social media post, but you asked about like as a
Totally.
therapist, that's a little
No,
weird.
no,
That's
I
not
love it.
client centered at all.
Love it. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for Logan. So, for individual like therapists who claim to be more like focused on individuals who are going through like faith crises,
Mhm.
for example, specifically as it pertains to like the LDS Church, I guess one of the problems I have that I've heard is it would seem as though like if I was a therapist and somebody came into my office and they had an issue with like, let's say, an aspect of what the church teaches, I would need to hear what they're saying and then kind of compare it to what I know about the church, right? Would that
Yeah.
be fair to like correct them if like perhaps I'll use like a very obvious example, like if
Okay.
they had an issue with um, being baptized because they didn't believe that they needed to be baptized, but the church's stance on it was like you need to be baptized. Would it be fair as a therapist to say, well, that's like just the church's standing, like you can't technically have trauma from something that like I'm viewing it like, well, why do you have an issue with something that clearly they're just like, that is the standard? So like, why is that a problem for you? Like, how would you go
Most
about
people
that?
would argue. Most people would argue. Therapists would argue that like that's causing religious trauma. It's indoctrination. You didn't have choice. You didn't have free will, and so they're like it
Right.
could be traumatic. That's probably what a lot of them would say. If someone were to say that to me, I'd be like, wait, what are you asking me for? Like what are you talking about? What's your goal? That's what I would ask. Like, what are you trying to get out of this? And I would just say, okay, what was your experience? Help me understand what you experienced with this, with the church, of being what you consider forced to be baptized before you could actually make a good decision or whatever, right, their concern was. And then I would just go down the road with them. It's not my job to be like, well, guess what? This is why the church does that, whether I believe it or not. That's not, I'm not here to give them, religious advice. Am I answering your question,
Well,
Sam?
I guess what if they were to propose something that like the church actually doesn't teach, like at its core, and propose it as if it is something that the church teaches, and that's why there's trauma that's being caused to them. Would it make
So
sense to like correct
like
their
they're
understanding?
misrepresenting a church teaching or something like that.
Correct. Yeah. So like if they're
So if they're
misrepresenting, like,
open-minded,
yeah, yeah.
sorry.
No, please.
So if they're open-minded, like I can usually read that pretty quick. Like if someone's like, "Hey, I don't understand this, and my parents taught me this, and this," for example, today I had a client, and they were like, this girl was like, "My dad, my family like told me that this is bad," and I was like, that's not what I know the church says, right? Is that
Right.
an example?
Right.
And I was literally,
Exactly.
I showed her. I was just like, I don't. That's not what I learned. That's not what I
Right.
believe. Da da da. And so it's just like some of it's just empathy and space to hear that. And then it's like, okay, what do you want to do with this? If she wants to work through how that's affected her, I will do that all day, right? All day. But if they want to talk, some clients, they're usually on the fence or trying to figure out their faith. They'd be like, but what do you think? Generally, as therapists, it's like, look, what I think doesn't matter about this. But I will say, look, I'm not just, I literally will say, this isn't about me sharing my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter in here on faith or any of these belief things. That doesn't matter. And I'll give them usually two opposite views to expand what they might see or perceive in this. I will say, hey, here's one thing I've heard from clients. Here's another thing I heard from clients. Those are just perspectives to look at it with, to challenge her thinking, because then she can get out of that space of, I'm still a victim to this, for example, right? She
Right.
might say, yeah, I hate the church. I don't, and I'll be like, okay, great. Don't go to church anymore. But does that make sense? So I don't, rarely, but I will occasionally, if someone, is like, look, I want to know what you learned in the church, then it's not a belief. And I'll be like, I'll tell you what I learned, what my experiences were, but I'll usually try and go to other people because I don't want it to feel like I'm trying to convince them of anything. I'll go there
Totally.
occasionally, but does that answer your question more clearly?
Yeah, somewhat. I think one of the issues I have is like a lot of the people that do kind of occupy that space,
Mhm.
from their videos, it sounds like they do have a misunderstanding of what the church teaches, and it's kind of perpetuated through the fact that like perhaps they're giving their opinion of how the person that they're providing therapy to, how they should perceive certain doctrines from
Yeah,
the
and
church.
we
Like,
shouldn't do that either way, is what I was saying earlier. We
but
shouldn't tell someone what to go ahead.
even so much so that like they could have a blind spot in even correcting or even understanding the problem. Like for example, if like
Yes.
I'm not a therapist, but if someone were to come to me and say like, "Hey, I'm having a really hard time with this thing," if I don't understand what the church's actual position is on it, that individual topic, I can't even begin to say like, "Hey, we'll pump the brakes." Like that's probably not actually how you should potentially understand it, because this
Yeah.
is like what the church actually teaches. Now, obviously,
So
that does
yes,
lend weight.
Right.
That does
Right.
lend weight
So
to
like
like,
helping
now it's
them
my opinion
to
as well on some, or my understanding, right? It does kind of
right.
somewhat potentially lend its weight to that, but
So like there's a lot of examples with like that I've seen where people take to the internet. They start becoming exmo influencers, and one of the things they struggle with, from what I've seen, is separating their family teachings from church teachings. And so they're like, oh, when I was a kid, my family taught me this, and that was, and they believe that that was a church teaching. And other people are
Absolutely.
growing up without that, saying like, no, that was a you thing. That's not a church thing, And so
Yeah.
maybe I think that's really beneficial to call it out, From my perspective, I look at that and say like, hey, if you can just call it out and just let them know like, this is a thing that you did with your family. That's not actually what the church teaches. And that I think can be incredibly beneficial to them in helping understand like, oh, maybe I have been looking at the church at the wrong angle.
So
Maybe my
let me
family has given me a warped lens of what reality is.
Hayden, that was perfect. And Sam, I get your question. To be clear, I try and use other people's examples like, hey, this person told me this is how they were raised and what they were taught. So they can be like, oh my gosh, why was I taught this? They can see the flaw in their parents' teaching, right? And then
Totally.
again, I try not to share too much personal, but I will definitely be like, look, and again, this is what people hate about it. But like, I've been like, look, I grew up there and I never learned any of that. That is not what I learned. That is not what I know. I'm sorry. If it's just
Right.
absurd, like for the number one example I hear, people that grew up in Utah. My parents were born in Vegas. And so I think they kind of raised us a little bit different than the normal traditional Utah culture. But
Yeah.
like, so many people have come to me like, yeah, everyone in my church around me told me they couldn't hang out with me because my parents would go to church or my dad drank coffee. And I'm like, my parents, we were the most inviting family on the street. We had the kid over to our house every day that the parents were disastrous. This kid's dad drank alcohol every day. So I was like, I don't get this, guys. Like, I don't understand. So then we go around now to the therapy, right? We get away from the religious. It's not my job. But I think it's very good to help people see a different perspective that's like, what you learned is not true. And what I was going to say it's parallel to is parenting. Parents teach their children horrible things. Now, there's not a religious or right way to parent, right? But like,
Right.
I'll be like, look, and they'll be like, yeah, my parents just told me that my younger siblings were my responsibility. And it's like they literally parented their siblings from the time they were 9 up. And I will challenge that all day, like you're talking about. Religion is just a little more tricky, right? And a little taboo in our world. So, but I appreciate this. I wish we had more of these conversations because people are often suffering in silence, and I would argue ignorance, because they did not learn and were not raised, like you said, in the culture as it should be. Not that I'm
Right.
this dictator that knows it all, the authority figure on that, but it's very good to share perspectives of what other people experience. I'm like, dude, if at the very least as a therapist, I say, what you learn might not be true, because here's something I've heard other people say 1,000 times. And they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I learned that way. And I think it does the same thing that you guys are getting at. So just weird. We got to do a
Totally.
little more tactful.
Yeah. So we've got a few more comments to catch up on. This one is from Kyle1. He says, Step 1, be therapist. Step 2, get Utah Instagram famous. Step 3, create spiritual dissonance between your followers and church. Step 4, get paid to fix the problems you create. Step 5, go on to Exmo Cruise. Oh, nice one, Kyle. Calling out the problem. That's what I see from a lot of popular ex-member, anti-member therapists. They get out there and they kind of remove your locus of control. They're like, the church is the whole problem. You never had a choice. You never had free will. The church told you what to do. Now you're married with kids and you're miserable. And I have the solution. If you just come, I will help you. I will free you and lead you to your promised land. And it all starts with getting me on a cruise. So Joselito 811 says, lots of therapists are activists towards their therapy focus. They act like they have the solution, but they sure want you to remain in their system. 100%. And then we have Kyle again. He says, no. That's another sub conversation. Okay, I think we're pretty much caught up. Yeah. All right. So we're getting close to the hour here, but it reminds me of, there's a verse in 2nd Nephi here. It says, that plan of the cunning, that cunning plan of the evil one. Oh, the vainness and frailties of the foolishness of men. When they are learned, they think they are wise, and they hearken not unto the counsel of God. But to be learned is good if they hearken unto the counsels of God. So I hate it when they use those credentials and they're just like, hey, look at this. Hey, my credentials. Now follow me into something that's actually going to make you and your family pretty miserable in the end result. Like the families that I know that have been wrecked by a lot of these therapists, they're not happier now than before. And that's hard to see. But they've made some really big choices that they can't really unmake at this point, which is tough. So I love seeing that. So as we wrap up, how can we help more dads, especially families, as they are checking online? Because I mean, I had to check. I had Jeff Borders send me that article saying like this woman, she basically, you know, she left the church before they could excommunicate her, basically. So like, how can we online find ways to vet out these therapists so that we know that they're actually going to lead us to a healthy, happy future and not a bleak, divorced, miserable, awful, dark future? Sam, what are your thoughts? We'll start with you on this one.
See, this is going to be like somewhat
like
anecdotal, but I mean, even from like my own life experiences, like going and bishops aren't going to want to hear this, but when I spoke with my bishop over the years, like I've received a lot of like really, I would say like key things over time through multiple bishops that have really helped me, I think, understand things around my life and throughout my life in a more clear fashion. And I think while bishops aren't therapists, I think that they can provide you with some very valuable tools to help you better understand the church, if that's the route you're trying to take. Like if you're trying to understand where you fit in the grand scheme of things, I think like I don't want to say ecclesiastical leaders, but like your bishop and your, elders quorum presidents, or even those within your elders quorum, as long as it's not a dead elders quorum, can be kind of a pretty valuable tool for you. And I do think therapy's good if you need that. But I would just caution people to understand that it can be kind of tricky to understand our theology if you're not invested in learning it. And I've met too many active members that I feel like don't have a grasp on what we believe to believe that there's anti-members that have a better understanding.
They got it perfectly. Yeah. They've all ironed out.
I would just be a little cautious if you're approaching a therapist with the intent of like, hey, help me understand why this thing is just not working for me that I want to have work for me in my life, because they might not have the answer you're looking for. But
yeah, I love that, Sam. I'm with you. I actually think we should, if you're having a faith crisis, for example, right? You learned something, you thought the church was lying, right? Common stuff, totally valid, right? Like to feel that way, and it happened, right? We didn't share a lot of stuff for a long time. Go talk to people you trust. And I'm not just saying go blindly ask your bishop. I don't think that's what you were saying either, Sam. I think having a very good conversation with someone that you trust is in a spiritual good place that will also allow you to doubt and question. I think that's better than coming to a therapist. Therapists aren't meant to deconstruct people's faith. That's not our freaking job. That is not our job. I guess
I gotta get
could
that
be
on
wrong.
a t-shirt. That's fantastic. Yeah.
And I'm not saying like it's impossible to help people with that. I'm just saying like we're taught not to freaking talk about religion. So why are we like the experts on deconstructing someone else's faith? Let alone, and they're like, oh, we should be biased. They always tell us, you don't work with family members, you don't work with friends, you don't work with people you know because you're biased. But come into my office and let me tell you why your church is bad. What the freak is going on here? So to me, that's an issue. I'm like, we're hypocrites. And we all are in our own right? But ultimately, that's my point, is like, go talk to the people that you trust. That doesn't mean always go talk to your bishop. That certainly doesn't mean go talk to your elders quorum president or to me, right? Or Hayden, or Sam, but like, go talk to someone in the word that you feel safe challenging your thoughts with. See someone who maybe has a lot more doctrinal experience and understanding that isn't going to try and convince you to stay in the church. And I think that's the biggest factor. Go have a good educated conversation with someone who's spiritual, but isn't going to try and convince, because that's against what we're saying too. You need to figure it out for your freaking self. But I don't think going to talk to a therapist about your faith is probably the best idea. Religious trauma is kind of the other side of this coin, right? So we have faith
Right.
deconstruction. Lots of therapists here promote that and do that. Whatever, that's fine. I don't agree with it, but that's fine. But the other side is religious trauma. Plenty of people have trauma from their experiences in the church. A bad bishop, right? Molestation, all sorts of things that are very valid. And indoctrination from parents. We talked about that earlier. The culture of the home or the ward does not mean that's what the church teaches or how it should be. And so it's like,
Right.
if you've experienced that, I have so many clients that have been there and I have empathy for them. I cry with them at times. It's terribly sad. Let's help you work through your trauma. But your faith decisions are none of my business. That's my
I love
response
it.
there.
Love it. I think that's great. So for those active dads in the age of 2026, we're in a home-centered church. If you are thinking like, hey, either yourself or your wife could benefit from a little bit of therapy, I think my advice would be, first of all, after you call Logan, and if he's not local and you can't figure out Zoom and something
Sam.
terrible happens, yeah, then what you do is you reach out to family services, because family services, it's church supported, just like we are these days. And so I think they're going to give you a pretty good shake. They're going to make sure that you're taken care of. And I think the bishop can actually help if finances are a problem on that one. I think local wards can actually help you out with that. And so I would say lead into that service as much as you can. But at the end of the day, the church does not struggle. Turns out with therapists, we struggle with activists posing as therapists. And so until next time, Logan, where can people find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, Breakthrough Therapy here in St. George, Utah. We're located right in Washington. Yeah, small team. Me and two gals, two therapists. I have other men that I work with as well that I can give referrals to as well. Yeah, if it's therapy needed, absolutely. That's what I do. And I've told you, Hayden, I do coaching and consulting as well for more professional stuff. That's a separate thing. But if you're looking for therapy, absolutely, right? That's what it's about. And I've had a lot of experience now with this exact topic that people are struggling with, and I'm not saying I'm the answer for that, but yeah, Breakthrough Therapy, St. George, Utah.
Cool. Sam, where can people find you? Are you in I'm gonna say Saudi Arabia now, or where are you these days? Yeah.
No. I will. I'm still at the Holiday Inn Express. For
there
2
it
weeks.
is. Yeah.
And then I'll be in Europe. Then I'll be maybe attending these live streams potentially at my time would be in early in the morning, which is perfect.
Hey.
So then I will be absolutely fried mentally.
Look at that. You'll be chipper, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
And I might be able to put a sentence together. So.
Yeah, eating some of that Haagen-Dazs out there. That's great. Hey, that's fantastic. Well, that is great. And until next time, if you are in a Dead Elders Quorum, be sure check out strengthofdads.com, strengthofdads.com. We have Logan Blazard come out twice a month, and he runs AMA, completely anonymous AMA sessions, where if you're struggling, you don't know where to go to, this could be a great first step, where it's like, hey, I'm struggling with something, I don't know what to do. Submit a form, it's completely anonymous, and Logan will address it in the chat. All of that and more at strengthofdads.com. Until next time, my name is Hayden Holm, and this is